Senator McPhedran.
Thank you very much, Your Honour. I would like to request to revert to ask a question. I need to say, as I have said so many times, I am not a small person, and I am not a wallflower. I'm not like I blend into the wallpaper here. I stood immediately after Senator Moreau made his speech. I stood, and I was not recognized. I stood immediately after Senator Housakos made his speech. I stood, and I was not recognized. I have one question to ask, and I would like to ask for the support of the chamber in reverting so that I can ask my question.
Do Senator Moreau and Housakos agree to take questions?
I only need one person.
Which one? Which one, Senator? Which one, Senator McPhedran? Which one, Senator?
Housakos.
Senator Housakos? To Senator Housakos? Is that it, Senator McPhedran?
Yes.
You want to ask his question to Senator Housakos? Is that okay? So easily granted, senators. Yes. Senator McPhedran.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And I really want to say a big thank you to Senatrice Motion. I think what was said on the record just now is very important, and we need to keep it in mind. So thank you for that. My question to you, Senator Housakos, was that you made reference in your speech, as did Senator Moreau, over and over again in the previous debate on C-4, and again today, you both mentioned it, that this was a unanimous decision of the House. Did you know that there was a larger wrap-up motion which was itself passed unanimously, but did not indicate unanimous support for the bills within it? We've been told repeatedly, including your speeches, that there was no division. But in fact, inside that wrap-up motion, Bill C-4, Bill C-13, and Bill C-12 are all mentioned, and 4 and 12 are specifically described as a vote on division. Were you aware of that?
Senator Housakos.
Yes, I was. Were you also aware on second reading it was a standing vote and 343 MPs, not one voted against it? Were you aware of that?
Senator McPhedran.
May I answer? I mean, he's asking me a question, but there were not all the MPs in that chamber stood. Elizabeth May, on both occasions for C-4 and C-12, registered on division, and in the reference in the motion, the wrap-up motion, it says it names her explicitly in both of those.
Senator
My understanding is that, including the leader of the Green Party, on the second reading voted for the motion. Then I believe on third reading she had other reservations. But the bottom line, Senator, is an overwhelming amount of people in the chamber voted in favor of this bill. What's even more important that I didn't mention in my remarks, at the end of the day, the Canadian democracy is the most respected democracy in the world. And to be honest with you, as somebody who's participated at a distance in it, I find quite insulting the level of debate that took place in this chamber by senators like ourselves, who are appointed by the elected prime ministers and House to provide sober second thought. And somehow to be disparaging about our electoral system, one that is respected around the world, quite frankly, I think we do a disservice to our democracy, our process, and this very parliament.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. I'd first like to thank my colleagues, Senator Moreau, as well as Senator Housakos and Senator Motion, for their contributions to the debate on the nature of the Senate and its role. I think their contributions were interesting. However, I would like to concentrate on the message received from the House of Commons and explain my point of view.
Le 26 février.
4 of Bill C-4. As you will remember, Part 4 amends the Canada Elections Act to assert the exclusive federal jurisdiction over the activities of federal political parties, including in relation to their collection, use, and storage of Canadians' personal information.
That's what it's about.
As I said in my speech leading to the adopted amendment, I totally support the assertion of exclusive federal jurisdiction over federal political parties and their interactions with the electorate, including in the collection of personal information about them. Like many of you, my problem with Part 4 is that it creates a privacy framework with such a limited content that it does not guarantee some of the basic privacy rights and protections for Canadians in connections with the use of their personal data collected by federal political parties. The amendment that we adopted and sent to the House of Commons, including the government, was very simple. You should consider recognizing more privacy rights to Canadian voters within the next 3 years, failing which the parties should lose the protection shield granted to them by Part 4. Put differently, we proposed a strong incentive to further amend the Canada Elections Act to improve the privacy rights and protections recognized to the Canadian voters. So let's look closer to the content of the reply message that was read by the Speaker. There are 4 distinct parts to the reply from the House of Commons. In the first part, the House declared that Parliament should be the body that decides the rules that governs communication by federal parties with Canadians. I fully agree with this statement. Incidentally, Parliament includes the Senate, whose approval is an essential component of enacting any law. So there's no reason to disagree there. In the second part of the message, it states that our amendment risks exposing federal political parties to a loss of the shield that Part 4 proposes to grant them. Well, this is true. If there was no legislative amendments to the Canada Election Act within 3 years to provide minimum privacy rights, the shield will cease. The third part of the message, the most interesting for us, reads as follows, I quote, "The government intends to bring forward additional privacy provisions in legislative changes to the Canada Election Act within this parliamentary session." That's probably a message that the session is going to be longer than what some expected. End of quote. And well, they didn't say that in the thing. I'm adding that. Well, this is exactly what we were asking the government to do by way of our amendment, to bring forward amendments to the Canada Elections Act by adding more substantive privacy provisions within the next 3 years. That's going to be the maximum length, incidentally, left of this Parliament. Colleagues, we have achieved the goal of our amendment, and I think we can be proud of it. We are proving, once more, that the Senate is bringing a plus value to the legislative process, and that to the benefit of Canadians. In such a circumstance, there's no reason to insist on our amendment. I will therefore vote to accept the message. Before concluding, I would like to briefly comment on the fourth part of the message. It says, and I quote, "There is a long tradition of the Senate deferring to the House of Commons on amendments to the Canada Elections Act, particularly those which have unanimous support of all recognized parties in the House and which govern the operations of candidates representing political parties seeking election to the House of Commons." End of quote. I agree with that initiative. I agree with the principle that the initiative to amend the Canada Elections Act, especially in a significant way, must belong to the elected chamber. And that is one of the reasons why I have consistently opposed the adoption of a Senate bill amending the voting age. Sorry, Senator McPhedran, but this is my view. However, I want to add that it is our constitutional duty to review legislations carefully as a chamber of sober second thought, including any proposed amendments to the Canada Elections Act, even when adopted unanimously or almost unanimously in the other place. Unanimity should not deter us from fulfilling our constitutional duties. I'm proud of the fact that this is exactly what our Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee did, and subsequently this whole chamber. Colleagues, considering the importance of the other measures contained in Bill C-4, it's the time to vote to accept the message and send Bill C-4 to read the whole for royal assent later today. Our work here is done, and well done. Merci de votre compréhension. Thank you for your attention.
Senator Dasko, you would like to ask a question?
I would. Would Senator Delphine take the question?
Yes, please.
Senator, I have to say that one of the phrases in the message is one that I don't agree with. That phrase that says there's a long tradition of Senate deferring to the House of Commons when it comes to the Canada Elections Act. In research that Senator McPhedran did, she found that the Senate had amended the Canada Elections Act 15 times in the last 20 years. So I would suggest that suggests that this chamber does not show special deference with respect to the Elections Act. So first of all, I would suggest that the phrase in the message is not factually correct. And I'd like your view on that. And secondly, I would also suggest that this chamber has a vital role in our democracy. So do the courts, the media, civil society. We all must play a role in the health of our democracy. And surely we should not be deferring to the political parties in the House of Commons. They play a vital role as well, but we should never, ever, ever accept the notion or the argument that we have a less substantial role to play. We all have a role to play in creating and maintaining a strong democracy. And so I would like to make that statement, and thank you for your comments.
Senator Dalphon.
Thank you, Senator Dasko, for these two questions, because I understand there are really two. I'll start by the second one. So I agree that the Senate is an important institution, but it has to be remembered that over the time, there's not been any senator that became a prime minister. The last one, it was the beginning of the 20th century. Policy evolves, politics evolves, institutions evolve. And the Supreme Court, when it made its ruling on the reference case on the Supreme Court, on the reform of the Senate, that's not very long ago, and was one of the one who drafted, in fact, the Court of Appeal decisions on that very issue that was confirmed in the Supreme Court. We have expressed the view that the Senate is a complementary chamber. And in the well-thought document that was given as a gift when we were coming to the Senate by Senator Harder when he was the government House leader, it was a very interesting piece that explained the history of the Senate and the precedents where the Senate did stand ground, but also the principle that we are a complementary, first and foremost, a complementary chamber. And at the end of the day, we do our work, and when we get a message, we have to be different. Sometimes if there was a huge mistake at the other place, and they were going a blatant violation of the Charter of Rights, I think we should then stand our ground. But this, I expect, will never happen in our democracy. So That being said, that answered the second question. The first one was about the 15 amendments or 12 amendments that Senator McPhedran referred to in a previous speech. Yes. Yes. I've looked at these bills. None of them could be qualified as a very significant amendment to the Election Act. Moreover, they were done at a time where political parties were represented in these chambers and where the government of the day had ministers in this chamber, and the government of the day was asking for amendments to the Election Act, and the government of the day could not act without the consent of the political parties. So I think we have, through our evolution, recent evolution, disconnected most of us from the political parties. That brings that evolution, the fact that we have to understand that since voices here are no longer the voices of political parties, or the backdoor voice of the political parties, or the back door of the elected ones by those that sit with them at caucus, discuss with them in a party, in partisan activities, it's no longer the case. So that brings the idea that what is related to democratic process has to emerge or be initiated at the place where the elected officials and the representative are. And maybe it's no longer here. So that doesn't mean that we don't review it carefully. Doesn't mean we cannot improve. When we had the review to the Election Act about absent Canadians living abroad, voting by mail, there was a lot of discussion in the Senate, very useful, and we made some improvement to the text. And that's what it belongs to us. But the initiative to say Canadians living abroad can vote or not it arise from the House of Commons, from the government, and at the initiative of the government and the political parties. So I think we have evolved, and we have to take into consideration all the things we wrote were written 100 years ago in a different context. We are in a different context, and I think I stand by the principle that significant changes to the Election Act have to be done, initiated at least, in the House of Commons. Thank you.
Senator Cardozo, would you like to ask a question?
Senator Dalphon, would you take one more question? Thank you. It's just on the issue of unanimity. Senator Moreau and Senator Housakos talked about the high degree of support, and Senator McPhedran corrected us that what we're talking about, the language which is in the motion, which is particularly those that have unanimous support of all recognized parties. So I think that's what we can agree on, because indeed Elizabeth May has indicated she was not in favor of this. But my question my main question is, to me, it doesn't really matter that it was a unanimous vote or almost unanimous vote. The issue was that it was passed by the House of Commons by a majority of the votes. If it was a near unanimous vote, or unanimous of all the recognized parties, it strengthens the case. But it is not a necessary number. The number is 50% plus one. So if they were to send us back the bill with 50% plus one of the votes, it would be as legitimate as a unanimous vote. I want to make that point because at another time there may be a vote that is not near unanimous, and in my mind it is as legitimate, and I'd like your view on that.
Senator Dalphon.
Yes, briefly. I was supposed to be the shortest speech today. Obviously, if when we have to consider when do we defer and what kind of things we should be deferring to. When it's your unanimity, it certainly carries with it a larger weight than when it's a majority government that forces it through by time allocations against two other parties that are opposed to it. So, but that being said, you're right. What comes to us is a bill from the House of Commons. We review it. We do the work as thoroughly as necessary. And then, if we have proposals to make, we'll send it back to the House of Commons. If the message is refused by one vote, maybe it would be a case that maybe we should consider insisting, but we're not there yet, because what we have today is a bill and a message is coming back unanimous. Thank you. I'm finished.
Le temps est parti à votre